Right, so episode 6, I think we want to talk about ads and how digital ads specifically play a big role in what we were just talking about, right? How people buy, what people consider, what you're even exposed to in the first place. But let's start off from the top. What are digital ads for those who don't?
What are digital ads? I hope everyone listening into this will already know that.
Would have seen.
I hope so. You would have seen our ad somewhere, maybe. So digital ads, basically anything that you see online is technically a digital ad, right?
Yeah.
It can be a website.
Yeah.
It can be a banner. It can be a video on YouTube,
Or even a random social media post that wasn't paid for. It's just trying to sell you something. Correct. It's an ad.
It could be a text message.
Yeah. SMS coming in.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably like millennial stuff, like MMS back then.
Sure.
Things like that. Anything to do with online, I think.
Yeah.
Anything that touches digital, I'll consider as an ad.
Yeah. And I mean, just to name the obvious, to scope it out, right? I think you see a bunch of ads running on YouTube right before you watch the video you want to watch. You see a quick pre-roll.
Yeah.
Or right in the middle of the YouTube video, get a mid-roll of it.
Yeah.
You go to a website, you're reading a blog, you're reading news, you're consuming content, and you see those little banners on the side telling you, Club Med, $1,000 a night. Or you go on Facebook and you see that coming out. Or you're searching for flowers for Mother's Day, and you see 4 different pages before the ones that you're actually looking for.
Correct.
So that's sort of the majority of it, right? The next, I think, maybe obvious one. Do you like ads?
I love ads.
Do you like seeing ads and receiving ads?
I love seeing ads.
So I've heard both sides of the story. There are people who hate it, and there are people who don't mind it.
Before we get into that, what's your stance on that?
I don't mind it when it's relevant.
Okay.
Right? Because for me, if it's done well, it's another form of discovery.
Yes.
That's why I'm on social media in the first place.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're pushing out a new product, and you have a very nice way of positioning your product, and it's meant as discovery because I've not been to your website, it's not a retargeting, I'm not in market for it even. It's just like, hey, we have a new product in the market, we are whatever, right? I don't mind it. Because some of it, it's done really well. I hate it when it's out of nowhere, just very poorly executed.
Yeah.
There's nothing. So that's me as a consumer.
Yeah.
As a marketer, I don't mind seeing it just because it's doing research while I'm browsing.
Okay.
Right.
Maybe my consumer marketer is maybe my consumer and my marketer is too intertwined.
Okay.
I always think that when I see an ad, what am I feeling at that point?
Okay.
Okay, am I annoyed as a consumer, right? Am I annoyed or am I excited to see this? And I try to analyze every single time, like, what is it about this ad that has triggered me to feel a certain way?
Right.
And that's why I love it, only because it's part of my job. Like, I look at these things and I go, yes, it's confusing. I don't really know what they're trying to sell here, but I want to click into it only because I want to see what they're trying to do.
Right. Not necessarily as a consumer.
Yes.
More as a marketeer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So as a consumer, I think it's too intertwined for me to tell the difference between like what is it exactly like. Am I really annoyed by this? Or am I just annoyed by the fact that the ad was shit and didn't really tell me exactly what I need to know?
Right. Or like it looks like they need a better agency. Let me find a way to get to them.
Yes. A lot of times that's exactly what's going through my head. Like they can do better, and I think like we could have helped them done a lot better.
But in the spirit of dumb consumers, just to find a villain in this, right? I've come to a point where every time I see a poorly executed ads, the first thought that came to mind isn't that they hired a bad agency. The first thought that came to mind is that it's a shitty client. They are the ones that force a creative person to come up with bad ads. Because at the end of the day, the client approves it, right? And the client forces things to happen, right? So when I see a poorly done billboard or poorly done ad, I'm just like, oh, that's a really bad client.
Okay, never thought of it that way.
Just a jaded marketer, you know?
Yeah, okay, I've never thought of it that way, but I see your point now. Like, okay, let's.
Because I don't think anyone who's bad at creative was set up to be in that space, right? So arguably the supply is pretty decent.
Yeah. So sometimes it could be a bit like sunk cost-ish as well. Like your designer is that shit that by the time like that you've gone through like 5 different approvals, you're like,
Still bad.
it's still bad. You know what? Just go with it and see if it works.
I need this to go live. I just live with it once.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Are you on the stance of like things must look good?
No, not necessarily. Not necessarily. I think it really depends on what the ad is trying to, like, precisely like what you mentioned just now, right? Sometimes the ad just being a hook, or it looking ugly, or it looking confusing, would be the bait.
Yeah.
To you wanting to find out more. You're right. So if, of course, you talk about big brands, then it's easy, right, to say, you know, Breitling is launching a new watch for you. You know, then it's like, oh, what is it for me, right? But even if for an unknown brand, to just create that curiosity,
Yeah.
even if it's poorly done, right, there would be a purpose to it, and as long as it's intentional, not when you set out to do a good ad, it end up poor and it just doesn't deliver the impact, then it's bad, right? But I don't believe that all ad must be good. I think sometimes you intentionally want to make the ad impactful by making it bad.
Yeah.
Or it's a strategy in itself, right?
Absolutely. I think I agree with that one only because like even just recently, right, with some of our clients, we're seeing like a tenfold drop in terms of CPLs just because we're using less
Appealing creative.
correct, less brandy, less appealing, more complex looking ads. And it's probably a lot better. And I think just from the consumer's point of view, it's not always about like looking the best, but being able to tell the story enough that convinces the consumer that this might be the right solution for them.
Absolutely. I think, and that kind of conversation differentiates or is the biggest difference between a performance marketer and a brand marketer, right? Because the ad that you're referring to, no way a brand manager would have approved that. Yeah. But from a performance standpoint, it's 10x the results. So as a business, now it's a really tough call, right? Do you want to protect the brand or do you want to bring in the sales? Yeah. Right? And it's really up to the client to decide at that point. So if the market is too arrogant to push out bad ads, it's like, no, I'll never do something like this. Then they're just not the right performance person, right? Because at the end of the day, I think the purpose of having an agency is to be able to get range. Yeah. So that you, as a brand, you can decide, I want my agency to be on this end of the spectrum, extremely brandy, award-winning execution, or extremely tacky, and there's a tool that you can reach out to, right? You may not use the hammer all the time, but when you need it, you have the hammer there. So then the point of having an agency is because I want that range, right?
So a little bit more data-driven over here, and a little bit more brand image.
Intuition and brand and perception there, yeah. And yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah. So what makes a good ad? What makes an impactful ad?
The most basic way that I think that the teams are taught at the moment is ADA.
Okay.
You know,
awareness,
desire, interest, action. So every single ad, the biggest thing is awareness.
Yep.
If you can't create awareness for it or attention to it, it's pointless. If it doesn't stand out from the platform that you have it on, it makes no sense. It's like having, you look at billboards on the streets, right? Like most of it is just standard colors, even blue sometimes, right?
Yeah.
And it blends in with the sky.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make sense. Whereas I think there was one that I saw in terms of billboards that caught my attention. It was basically all black
Okay.
with just the one word of the website. I think it was kingdom.com.my. It was a church.
Right.
I didn't know it was a church, so basically it was like, okay, that's interesting. Let me type it in and check it out.
See what's there, right?
And it was a church, but it got my attention, right? It got my desire to actually go to the website to check it out or what it was. It may not have been the best one, but at least it had that attention and awareness, right? So to me, like any ad online or offline needs to have that element.
That element.
Yeah.
I think from my perspective, a good ad is an ad that delivers the impact, right? So like in your case, however vague that sentence is, if the intention is to create curiosity for a random person to just key in, then I think it is his job, right? Sometimes the ad's purpose is to drive sales, and if no matter how tacky it is, if it delivers sales, then it does its job. If it's supposed to introduce a new product to the market, and you're trying to show now we have a 4-ply toilet paper because apparently there's a demand for 4-ply toilet papers. If it introduces the product well, or introduce that product segment into the new consumer, and that's the objective, then I think that's an impactful ad, or that's a good ad. So I think the ad does its job. It's a good ad, and I intentionally miss out avoid using words like creative or design, only because those, again, right, those are things that you can control to deliver the impact. Yeah. At the end of the day, if it's not moving the needle, it doesn't matter.
Correct. Yeah, right. Yeah.
So speaking of needles, then what are the metrics that we normally do to look at ads?
What are the metrics? I think the number one thing, if you're working on any platform, like doesn't matter, Facebook, Google, YouTube, whatever, programmatic, right? I think the number one thing to justify whether or not it's good or not, it's going to be your click-through rate.
Yeah, I agree.
And just for those that don't know, like how it works, right? Back in the olden days when you used to only sell space. So I have a space on my website. It's going for 5,000 ringgit, and I want to buy it for a whole one, right? The typical way of doing that deal is you give me 5,000. I give you the space for like a whole month.
Yeah.
Or sooner or later, like then a lot of people wanted that same space. How do you share it? And then they have to do a bidding system to see who was willing to bid the highest.
Yeah.
To the point like no one was going to pay that much money just to own that space, right? Mm-hmm. So then they had to find ways to make more money out of that.
Yeah.
That's where things like what are the performance matrix for ads would be like. Obviously click-through rate. Mm-hmm. So if you have a very good click-through rate, people are clicking on the ads, it just means that you're going to get more attention to that ad.
Yeah.
Right? People are more willing to engage with your ads, so meaning that ad was
more successful. Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe just to take a step back and kind of give a bit more context to the beginners that's listening. The different ways of buying ad spaces, right? I think the first method that you mentioned is pretty much outright buying that space. Kind of like billboard. I just want to be here.
Yeah.
I'll pay you rental for your space here for a month. Yeah. Right. The second one would be the bidding ones where you are charged based on the impression that was served. Right. So I have 3,000 people coming in. If you want to serve to all 3,000 of them, it's going to cost you this much. If you want to serve to half my traffic, it's going to cost you this much. And then it becomes a CPM buy, right, or impression buy. Google that shit. And sometimes it's on a click basis. It was a CPC, it was a cost per click on it. So I absolutely agree with you, right? I think click-through rate is the single most important metrics to track if you're running an ad. Yeah. Because you don't know what you don't know, right? So at the point of the ad being served, how do you know that the audience isn't a good quality audience or isn't your prospective buyer? you don't unless they click into it.
Correct.
Right? I know that clicking into it doesn't mean that they will buy, but it's the most important step.
Yeah. It could just be another bot clicking on that too.
Correct. And I think
That's a different topic.
That's a whole different topic completely. And yeah. So I agree with you. I think if I'm only able to track one metric, it will be click through rate as well.
Yeah. Because it's really the only thing that you can look at, right? Like you can look at impressions, you can look at click.
Yeah.
But other than that, like the actual ad itself, there's not a whole lot that you can go by. I mean, like other platforms will have their own things. Like, like let's just say Facebook has comments,
Mutual rate and engagement and
that kind of stuff, right? Or like, or shares and stuff like that. But like, other than that, like on most platforms across the board, click-through rate is still the number one thing to justify whether or not there's an intent
from the
viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. And also to caveat it, because advertisers know this and because marketers know this, right? You start to see more and more, I guess, clever execution that's actually detrimental, right? Where you're playing a game and then pop up this specs, right? I'm there and intuitively you just accidentally click into it and then it creates a high click-through rate, but also like a high bounce because it's not the thing you want to click on and it's making it really hard for you to close the ad. So of course there are all those little dirty tactics around, right? But I mean, that aside, generally speaking, if you're buying a relatively clean inventory, clicks are the most important ones that you can measure. Right? And then once they come to your landing page, there's a whole other set of things you need to do to improve quality when it comes to landing pages.
Correct. Well, I do think like you were talking about like all these like dirty tricks, right? Like pop-ups and stuff like that. Only because my background is in the black hat side. I do think there is a valid reason for using those things as well.
Really? Like how?
So there'll be things that are low hanging fruit or even like low conversion switching rates, right? Where it doesn't take much for you to do something. Okay. So for example, it may not take much for you to see a gaming ad and you think, oh, this is a pretty cool game. Let me download it. Right. It may not take you much effort to check out a Shein. Just because it's right in front of your eyes now. Right. Why don't I just check it out right now? Right. And usually these are going to be coming from like really dodgy websites. So places like streaming websites, torrent website and whatnot. So where you do have a lot of time to spend on the computer.
Right. So okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So then you're more likely to kind of browse around and just do nothing on your computer. And this is where I think like there are going to be times where I think it might make sense to try out these places.
So the drop-off rate is going to be high because of the tricks that you deploy. Correct. But you're saying it's a numbers game, right? Correct. That from those who accidentally click on it, there's going to be a portion that's like, the browse has loaded. Might as well check it out.
Correct.
Right? And because it's such a low barrier action, they may be true conversions at the end. So it becomes a valid tactic. At the end of the day, when you measure the entire funnel, your cost per purchase still justifies it. Then even if it's like a 90% or 99% accidental clicks, because it's so cheap to buy those clicks anyway, why not?
Yeah. I mean, in comparison to like your major platforms like Google or Facebook, right? Your CPM, you're probably paying like $1 CPM. And this is like real in front of your face CPM, like they're going to your website kind of thing, right? So although it's probably not the best ones, but if you do have a product or service that makes sense in that case, like let's just say you're selling VPN, right? And you want to go onto these torrent websites to sell VPN to, hide your privacies. It's the best place. You pop up something saying that, hey, we can detect your IP right now.
Yeah, and just literally show you IP address. You're based in Cheras.
And let me sell you this VPN or something along those lines. So there's a place and time for it. Just need to know what is good for that.
Yeah, I think it comes back to the fundamentals of if you're running an ad, you measure performance. And as long as it's performing, maybe the black box in the middle can be questionable, but as long as it's driving you performance, then if it's not wrong as a method to achieve performance.
Correct.
Yeah, that's interesting. So we got to the metrics. I think CTR being the main one. If my click-through rate is bad, what can I do? How do I improve my ad?
Maybe look at what the ad itself is saying or doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think to me, like I said, like ADA, if you have attention to the ad, is probably like your number one thing. And then the last one is going to be action. The desire, interest build up.
Yeah.
It may make sense or it may not make sense, but like if you don't have the first one and the last one together, you're definitely not going to get anything.
Right. So you're using the ADA framework in the context of having ADA in one ad, right?
Yes.
So the awareness or the hook, as well as the call to action,
Correct.
as the action in the same ad.
Correct.
So if it's missing any one of those components,
Yep.
then to improve it is literally putting those components in that small space, right?
Trying to figure out like, because we're talking about like, if you're, let's just say Facebook, right? You're scrolling through and your ad is just going to be one of the hundreds of ads on that page, right? If you think about it, Facebook's blue and white and a bit of gray. If your ads is any of those colors, you're just going to blend in with the rest.
Yeah.
Right. So how do you stand up? Maybe red, maybe yellow, anything that kind of stands out from the rest. So then you have your attention there. If you have something that is slightly more appealing to the eye, that captures the person's attention, even better, right? Then you have attention. So once you have the eyeball on those ads, you can go through your desires, you can go through building up interest and whatnot, but you still need to have a call to action. Because at the end of the day, people are just dumb. You don't tell them what they need to do next.
They will just not do it, right?
They won't do it.
I think, so I absolutely agree with it, right? So on a psychology point of view, if people are more likely to take an action because they're told to take an action, it would be stupid for a marketer to not tell someone to take an action, right? It just doesn't benefit you in any way, right? For me, I think improving the ad, another way that I look at it is not necessarily just the creative of that ad. It's also things that are a little bit more external. So for example, how different am I from all the competitors? Right? Similar to the environment that you're talking about, right? If you're on Facebook as a platform and everything is sort of looking like this, then being native or like blending into that ecosystem is just a bad idea, right? So then you want to stand out. Similarly, if you're on, let's say you're advertising on a car or secondary car review site and you're selling cars, right? Everyone is going to have a picture of a car and a price and then a button there and everything is going to look the same, right? So then it's one way to test it out is literally to be different, right? Do not show the car from that angle with the price. I mean, we show something else, showing an emblem or showing some like anything else that would stand out. Back to your framework that it's all about attention.
Yep.
In a place where you can see a lot of cars, having a nice shot of a car isn't really going to stand out as much as that in a flower shop, right? So that's one thing that I'll look at, standing out. Second thing that I will probably also look at is the storytelling of it, right? Much like what you're saying also, I think sometimes you don't really need the entire ADA there. I think sometimes all you need is just the start of the story, kind of like the teaser, right? And I think especially the attention grabbing part, the Thai ads does it really, really well. And some Japanese ads does it really, really well too. They can come out with like a hook where the storyline has absolutely nothing to do with the product. And then suddenly, bam, selling you a medicine.
I do with that one. Like Thai ads are really, truly amazing to be able to capture your attention in the most subtle way, but then still be able to deliver the message that they're trying to deliver at the very, very end. And I think when we talk about like things to do with ads, being able to copyright, being able to tell that story is one of those skills that I think every marketer should have, and Thai marketer seems to be able to get it right. Yeah.
more often than not.
Yeah, because we're talking about like a very generic video that starts off with nonsense, but you're hooked to it, right? You're hooked to watching it. Then all of a sudden, like it really builds in, it really ties in. It
Brings in your product somehow.
And finally, you have this product that when it comes up, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
The whole idea of like someone getting injured or like someone being sad, you don't want to go through this misery. So you have to figure out something, and you finally figure it out. The thing that you figured out is this product.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I love it.
I think it really felt as if someone or the industry players just sat down and say, how do I sell the same thing, like an insurance,
Yep.
but do it so differently than how anyone else would sell insurance, right? And suddenly, when one or two of that hit it, everyone started copying. So now, like, out of the norm is the norm.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see what's the next boundary.
Yeah. I'm excited to see it done more around the world. Like, you know what, like, for me, I love the whole, what's that Dollar Shave Club?
Yeah, Dollar Shave Club.
Like, I thought it was brilliant. Like, and then when everyone started doing it, it became like
A style or a genre in itself.
a style, right?
Yeah.
But then recently, there's another new company that came up with a similar, because it's faded out, right? Faded out, that kind of ad. Then it came back in again with another company, and they're doing it really well as well.
Right.
Yeah. So it's one of those, like, if you can stand out amongst everyone, then you'll definitely do well. But don't follow that trend when it's already hot.
Correct. So I was going to say the same thing, right? I think once someone hit a success, when you find that successful metric,
Yeah.
the smart thing to do would be to ride on that success, because people want to see more of that.
Yeah.
And then the moment it becomes saturated, it's the worst thing to do, right?
Yes.
Being part of it at that point, when it's saturated, it's just the last thing you want to do as a marketer. So then your goal is, so then I think maybe not so much about digital ads, maybe more so from an agency point of view. The goal is to be able to do one, being able to jump on a trend really, really fast.
Yes.
Either you start the trend yourself,
Yeah.
or you jump on the trend really, really fast. Or number two, to be able to start the trend.
Yeah.
So once everyone is doing it, nope, I'm not doing this anymore. Let's do something else.
Correct. It's just like that. I remember, I'm not sure if you remember, a couple of years ago in Austria, ran down at LVP.
Yep.
I think Huawei was the first one that came out with it.
And then like Beijing does it.
Yeah.
And like Nando's does it.
And I'm like once the first two came out, the rest is just irrelevant.
Correct. So like speed matters, right? No matter how clever the fifth or the sixth one is, you're still number 5, right?
Yeah.
There's no more novelty in it.
Yeah. Because then the whole message is just drowned out. Like it's not that special. It's just like another person came up with it.
Right. Absolutely. So takeaway for our audience today, top three things to keep in mind as I'm designing my ad, as I'm running my ad.
I think one thing we haven't mentioned is audience. Who's your
Yes.
audience? So I'll say this: make sure you know your audience. I think the second thing for me will be use ADA. It's a very, very simple thing to kind of go through. And the last thing is always check your matrix and make sure that you're monitoring how your ads are doing.
Right.
No matter where it is, find a way to try to track it. Even if it's a billboard, have a way to track how things are done.
Right.
I think it's just lazy marketing if you don't track it properly.
Yeah, I think it's just not doing justice if you're not, right? And what's the point of the client hiring a performance guy?
Yeah.
So for me, my top 3 would be experiment. I think we've been through this quite a bit, right? Like constantly running experiment, constantly challenging your belief, constantly testing and retesting,
Yep.
and just to make sure that you are still relevant, right? I think a lot of times, and it's happened to us before also, where when we hand over to another agency, the other agency want to see our ad setup. I want to know your targeting. I want to know how you do it. I'm like, it's not even a secret sauce, right? So we will show it to them, and then they will replicate, and then they'll get a similar result for a while, and then the results will deteriorate.
Yep.
And suddenly they're like, oh, what do I do then? So then our secret sauce really isn't the setup, right? It's the process of improving it and the process of changing it.
Correct.
And that you can't copy.
Yeah.
Right. So I think experimenting is one big one. think number 2 would be very similar to what you mentioned, to measure, making sure that you are measuring, not just measuring, right, but measuring against the right metrics, right?
Yes.
If it's supposed to be a newsletter acquisition campaign, just because you accidentally got sales out of it, it's not a sales campaign. You still want to measure against how many people actually sign up for the newsletter.
Correct.
People accidentally buying and nobody signing up for your newsletter is still a fail.
Yes.
Execution, right? So I think like measure against practicing would be number 2. Number 3, I think it's just to take some learnings from the things that we've discussed. Dare to be different, right? Like stand out from the crowd. Because in the space today, everyone is doing digital. It's getting so saturated that it's no longer the easiest or the cheapest thing to do.
Yeah.
It's actually really expensive to run digital now.
Yeah.
Because of the cost to churn out good creative,
Yeah.
and not just any creative. It used to be that any creative comes out will work, right?
Yeah.
But it's no longer there.
Here's a stat for you. This just came out from Facebook. Facebook ads, quarter by quarter, especially this quarter, is probably the cheapest per ad unit right now.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
And they've increased viewer, like daily active users by 2 points. So from 66 to 68% daily active users.
Right.
So it's the highest daily active users and it's the lowest, which means
This is the right time to go into ads.
yes, but also it means that our ads are saturated by a lot because it's so cheap and so many people will be on it.
Right. So competition is going to get, the volume of competitors is going to be even higher than that ever.
Yeah, because it's got to be a lot cheaper. So definitely there to stand out. Otherwise, you'll just
drown.
100 ads out on there.
Right. Yeah, so I think that's the top three takeaways from us: audience, ADA, and metrics, and experiment, measure, and stand out. Any last words?
Yeah.
Not. Thanks so much for watching this quick episode. Look out for the next one, where we will be talking about flip. Insert next topic.
Make sure you share, like, comment, subscribe if you have it. Until then, I guess
See you in the next one.